Hi everybody, welcome to Ecodriver. My name is Helmut. In this video I will give you 5 tips of how to drive plug-in hybrids or how to use plug-in hybrids in the most efficient way. I have already done 2 other videos in this series. The first one was about full hybrids and the second one was about electric vehicles. You'll find the links to those videos in the description box below. So let's talk about plug-in hybrids, and let me get one thing clear at the beginning. This is not a place to bash any type of vehicles. If electric vehicles, vehicles with combustion engine, plug-in hybrids, they all have their right to be there. They all make sense in a different way, and we are only talking about how to use them in the most efficient way. So, my 5 tips. Number 1, think about whether it's the right vehicle in the first place. In some countries you get a bonus from the government when you buy a plug-in hybrid, or you get a tax credit. So a lot of people, a lot of companies buy these cars or drive these cars without using them correctly, and this has led or leads to kind of a negative image. Things like, or you hear things like, those cars go back after 3 years as leasing vehicles without the charging cables even unpacked in the trunk, and so on. So, but that's not the point. So we talk about how to use them correctly. So firstly, think about whether you can make best use of the technical opportunity those vehicles give you, and this is charging. Do you have the opportunity to charge the vehicle regularly? That's an indicator, yes, it might be the right vehicle. And this is especially about the manufacturer or the model of the vehicle. Think about it whether you need a lot of heating. When you live in Southern California, that's not the problem, but for most other parts of the world, significant part of the year you have to heat the vehicle, and some vehicles out there, when you drive in EV mode and you turn the heating on, then the engine, the combustion engine starts running in order to produce the heat. So think good about how the vehicle works. Most vehicles have an external heater, have a dedicated heater which works with petrol, but the combustion engine isn't running, and therefore the external heater is more efficient, or some get the energy for the heating of the traction battery. So inform yourself in advance, otherwise you might be surprised in a negative way. If you have the chance to charge the vehicle, then use the opportunity to preheat the car. In most vehicles this is then done with the electricity out of the plug. So if you have the opportunity to charge at home, perfect. If you don't have the opportunity to charge at home, then maybe you have other opportunities, like if you go shopping at the groceries, there is a charger. If you look here in Germany, Austria, lots of the big grocery chains, they have charging stations at their parking lots, and most of them are free. So if you have no chance to charge the vehicle, then it might not be the right choice for you, with one exception. And I want to state, I'm not promoting not charging the vehicle. I'm just saying, if you have to cover a longer descent regularly, then it might make sense to go for a plug-in hybrid, because you can use all the regenerative energy produced on the descent to then go a certain distance without the combustion engine. Some people also say that plug-in hybrids don't make sense if you do longer trips. If you have long distances to go, they don't make sense. It depends. For example, I got my plug-in hybrid consciously. I thought long and hard about it, and if I'm going to customers, I have to go either to Switzerland, to northern Italy, southern Germany, or more eastern parts of Austria. And in 3 of those 4 cases, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, I have to go up climbs and then down on the other side, and on the way back it's the same. So for example, when I come from northern Italy, I come from the Brennerbus, and this is 800 meters of drop in altitude, and I gain about 6 to 8 kilometers just by going down. Or the same when I come from Switzerland, go over through the Alpbach tunnel, and then I have, I don't know, 10-12 kilometers of descent, and I gain another 6-8 kilometers of electric range. And even if I wouldn't charge the battery, I'm still going with 6 liters per 100 kilometers for a 2.3 ton 7-seater SUV with 300 horsepower or 300 plus horsepower on the combustion engine only. And that shows that that even on long distances, plug-in hybrids make sense if the conditions are right. And in my case, they are right. And I'm surely not the only person who has this kind of driving profile. Sure, if you live in plain land or in northern Germany where there are no mountains or no hills, then yeah, sure, it probably doesn't make sense. But in lots of areas, this might make sense if you look at your daily commute, of your trips. What are you doing? That irrespective of the charging aspect, you benefit from the large battery and from the hybrid drivetrain. Tip number 2, and this is ABC. I'm learning this from Björn Nyland. Always bay charging. Whenever you have the chance, try to run the car in EV mode, as this is a much better use of energy than the combustion engine. Either you can charge at home, or as I said before, if you go shopping or you are somewhere. When I have a plug-in hybrid myself, and when I go to my customers and I stay in a hotel, I choose the hotel after the opportunity to charge my vehicle. So that at least the next day I have 40-50 kilometers of electric range. And for me, it doesn't make any difference whether I stay in this hotel or that hotel. Or I always ask my customers if they have a chance to charge the car somewhere, or if there's a charging station nearby, or I look it up myself. So always try to use the electric motor as much as possible. Tip number 3, gentle acceleration. If you have seen my video about the full hybrids, this is basically the same reason. I'm not talking about the physical aspect of accelerating. If you're interested in this, you can check out my video about the electric vehicles. The link is down there. This is especially for hybrids and plug-in hybrids. Normally, the electric motor is rather small. There are exceptions. Newer plug-in hybrids like the Toyota RAV4 Prime or the Way or the new version of the Volvo XC90, they have bigger electric motors, they have bigger batteries, so those vehicles are not really affected by that. But this is about the majority of the plug-in hybrids out there. They have a small electric motor. They have smaller batteries, so the engine isn't that strong. So if you're accelerating harshly, then in most cases the combustion engine kicks in. With some vehicles like my Volvo, if you're in pure mode, also if you're in EV mode and the electric and you press the accelerator hard, then it stays in EV mode. But with most other vehicles, if you exceed the power of the electric motor, then the combustion engine kicks in. So therefore, try to accelerate in a way that the electric motor can do the work. If it goes uphill rather steeply, or you're really accelerating hard, or you have you're towing something, then it probably will kick in sooner. But as long as possible, try to avoid the combustion engine to work, as this is not as efficient as the electric motor, as we have heard before. Tip number 4, gentle braking. Here, same tip as with the full hybrids, and it's basically the same reason as with the acceleration. The electric motor is not very strong. In most cases, you're around 50, 60, 70 kilowatts, and this is enough to move in city traffic, to accelerate moderately, just to drive normally. The main job in braking is done by the electric motor. So kinetic energy, that's the energy that is stored in the movement of the car, is transformed to electric energy, which can be stored in the batteries. That's great, but the electric motor is, as we have heard before, not very strong in most cases, and therefore you exceed the regenerative capacity of the electric motor. And keeping in mind that the average electric motor only produces around 80% of the power in regen mode that it produces in the motor mode, so when it drives the vehicle, that means that we have even less power to brake the vehicle than we have to accelerate it. And this means that you are exceeding the regenerative capacity of the motor. I show you here an example of my trip with the Renault Megane plug-in hybrid on the Ecodriver loop, and we are here on a descent, and there is a hairpin turn ahead of us, and I'm braking rather moderately, not really hard, and I'm already coming to the maximum of the charging scale. You see here this bar goes to the very end, and I'm even braking, and I'm braking even a little bit more, so that means that I'm already using the friction brakes to reduce the speed. That means I cannot make full use of the potential regenerative energy that could be produced. Therefore, try to brake gently, especially from higher speeds. You notice with electric motors, or electric cars or hybrids, accelerating from a standstill, that's okay, that's rather quick. Continuing the acceleration from 60 to 100 or 80 to 120 kilometers an hour, that's not very powerful, that's not very agile. And the reason is the torque with electric motors is rapidly decreasing with the number of revs. The higher the electric motor rotates, the lower the torque gets, and therefore you just lose power. You have less power at higher revs, and that means that you also have less power when braking from higher revs, from higher speeds. So on the motorway, when you hit the brakes at 100 kilometers an hour, I'm sure, I haven't done it with this car, but when you do it with your full hybrid or your plug-in hybrid, you will see that you will exceed the regenerative capacity really quickly, and you're doing all the braking work by the friction brakes, and the only form of energy this produces is heat. So brake gently. You probably missed my usual number 4, which is playing with the road. This tip applies with plug-in hybrids as well, but I restricted myself to 5 tips, and if you're interested what I mean by playing with the road, you can check out the full hybrid video where I explain this in further detail. And tip number 5, the correct use of drive modes. As you probably know, if you own a hybrid, you know that you have different drive modes. If I take my Volvo, it's pure electric, it's hybrid, there's an individual mode, there's all-wheel drive, and there's a sport mode. So what I mean by correct use of drive modes is, think about when you choose the form of energy you use. At lower speeds in general, try to use the electric drivetrain as much as possible. At city speeds up to 50-60 kilometers an hour, the EV mode is the more efficient way of moving the vehicle. When the speed goes up, then it probably makes sense to switch to the combustion engine. If you can cover your whole trip, the whole route with EV mode, then do it, even if you go faster, and if you have the chance to charge afterwards, that's perfect. But always try to use the different modes of traction where they make the most sense. Most plug-in hybrids have a feature in their sat-nav system, the navigation system, which calculates which mode to use to arrive at your destination with an empty battery. It works rather well with I have one slight issue with that. I've tried it with my Volvo, and you have to be in hybrid mode for this feature to be used. And when I switch from hybrid to pure mode, I have another 3 or 3 to 5 kilometers, 2 to 3 miles of electric range. And this additional electric range isn't used in hybrid mode. So in this case of the Volvo, it doesn't make best possible use of the electric capacity, and you probably have to find out whether this is the case with your plug-in hybrid. And therefore, if I know the road, and I know that most roads I'm doing, then I decide myself which mode I'm using. Let me say one thing regarding the charge mode. Most plug-in hybrids can charge the battery while driving through the combustion engine. You hear people probably say that's inefficient, and that's a crime against nature and against the environment, and it doesn't make sense. Well, I'm not so sure about that, because as we know, combustion engines have a very low efficiency. It ranges between 10 and 40%. And if you charge the battery with the combustion engine in a plug-in hybrid, then you're normally not producing more power out of the combustion engine. What happens is the point of the load is moved a little bit, so you increase the load on the combustion engine and therefore increase the efficiency. So what you gain in electricity is not directly related to the additional energy you use in the combustion engine to produce this energy as the efficiency goes up. And therefore there are situations where it probably makes sense to do this. So if you have if your battery is empty and you have 10 kilometers of city road at the end of your trip and you're on a motorway, I would recommend to charge the engine and then go in EV mode in city traffic. I have done a test with my Volvo. It's on my German channel, and I will translate it in the next couple of weeks and put it on Ecodriver as well, where I have compared the trip on my Ecodriver loop that I have done in hybrid mode with an empty battery and no charging, and then I have done the same with charging to use the EV mode in the last 17 kilometers in city traffic, and the difference was very small, roughly 6 to 8%. So it might make sense. And there's one more thing. One follower asked me about the eco mode, and that when he drives the eco mode, the consumption goes up. The eco mode is a setting on the vehicle which on its own has a certain effect, but this effect can be diminished or even reversed into the negative, means more consumption, if you don't use the vehicle then in the right way. In my real life and business, I see this with city buses. If the gearbox is set to the eco mode or the hyper eco mode or whatever it's called, we often see that the consumption goes up. Why? Because the power is reduced, the gears are shifting a little bit earlier, and this leads to the drivers pushing the pedal harder, trying to accelerate longer in order to make up for the loss of power. And if we transfer this to cars, to hybrids or plug-in hybrids, if you're in eco mode, you need to switch your brain to eco mode as well. If you try to drive the same way you did before in eco mode, there's no effect, and some drivers even subconsciously compensate the eco mode by just pushing the pedal harder and try to and use a higher percentage of the available power, and then it might well be that the consumption goes up. At the end, let me give you some numbers on my Volvo XC90 to show you what can be achieved when you use a plug-in hybrid correctly. I've done almost 12,000 kilometers on my plug-in hybrid, and so far the kilometer cost me 7 cents. The overall consumption on petrol is 3.84 liters per 100 kilometers, and the electric consumption is 12.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. This is the effect of charging as much as possible. Whenever the car is parked, either at my place, I had a plug installed just when I got this vehicle so that I can charge it whenever the car is in the garage. Wherever I am, I try to charge the vehicle externally to make best use of the EV mode. These are my 5 tips for driving plug-in hybrids more efficiently. If you like what I'm doing, then feel free to subscribe to this channel, and if you hit the notification bell, you won't miss any new video. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time.